Buenos días.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to a new session of the 8th Palaver Tree in the African Cinema Festival of Tarifa, Tanger of 2020. This is the first time we do this online, so we want to thank you all who are listening or watching us online. We have the section of training and industry of the Palaver Tree. This is from the festival. In all these years, thanks to the commitment of the ACERCA Program for the development of the cultural sector of Spanish cooperation, the Palaver Tree has become a yearly appointment for collaboration between cinemas from Africa and Spain. I'm going to give the floor to Mane Cisneros, who's the director and founder of this festival, who's going to introduce Elena Gonzalez, who's the head of the Department of Cultural Promotion of the Spanish Agency of Cooperation for Development, AECID. Good morning, Marion. Welcome, everybody, all the participants in this new webinar of the Palaver Tree. It is a pleasure for me to greet you and welcome you all, everybody, all the people who are connected from different parts of the world, and in particular, I would like to say hello to my students from Equatorial Guinea, who I would like to give a big hug and a kiss to all these people who are connected from Bata and Malabo. This Palaver Tree, which is starting now in its online format, which is devoted to the industry in particular. This is a forum for training and professional exchange, which we have been organizing for the last 8 years. We have been doing this together with the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation for Development, and we deepen in the exchange of knowledge between young professionals, most of them African professionals, and international startups. I leave you in very good hands, and I would like to introduce Elena Gonzalez, who is the head of the Department of Cooperation and Cultural Promotion of the Spanish Agency of International Cooperation for Development. This agency has been with us not only from the inception of the African Cinema Festival. They have been with us from the moment this Palaver Tree was started, and I would just like to welcome Elena. You have the floor. Apparently there is a problem with the sound. We cannot hear the sound in the English booth. We cannot hear the sound in the English booth. There is a technical problem. There's a technical problem, apparently. Elena, let me interrupt you. I would like you to activate your microphone. There is this technical problem. Thank you very much. Hello, Elena. Good morning. You switch on your microphone. You have just been introduced. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you now. Good morning. Welcome to you all to this 8th edition of the Palaver Tree. As Maria Cisneros says, the Spanish Agency of International Cooperation for Development has been supporting this festival from its inception in the year 2005. Has been 15 years of support of Spanish cooperation. Spanish cooperation has believed it essential to support this project, which is one of the most important projects in Spain for the dissemination of African cinema. This is a pioneer festival, which is a benchmark for the Spanish-speaking world. And we have one of the greatest collections of African cinema. And this is the only festival with Spanish subtitles. This is what allows us to have a great connection with the Latin American market. I would like to talk about how the Spanish Corporation collaborates with this festival. I would like to explain that the fifth master plan that is organized every 4 years, where we have the goals for cooperation of Spain. In this master plan, it is very clearly stated that the preservation of cultural diversity is a wealth that has to be preserved and which gives special relevance to the protection of the tangible and intangible heritage of people. And we must also promote intercultural dialogue. It is under these precepts that AECID develops and collaborates with projects prioritizing some regions and some sectors. And based on this, we create a series of support lines for the film industry of Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the Arab world. And we focus mostly with topics related to human rights, integration, gender equality, and solidarity. With this mandate from the Department of Filmmaking in AECID, they have the mandate of promoting culture. In the area of film, we have a twofold mandate. On the one hand, we collaborate with these film industries, these partner countries, and on the other hand, we promote Spanish cinema abroad through the film library Lola Millas, which is already 41 years old. And the name of the film library is Lola Millas because she was the founder, a woman who worked really hard to develop this collection of films. AECID promotes the dissemination of Spanish cinema through our embassies, our cultural centers, and also through the Cervantes Institutes. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, the support to this festival started in the year 2005, and it is from the year 2013 when this support was intensified with the collaboration with the Palaver Tree Forum, which is a project, a training project, which is unique in Spain, and it's aimed at promoting the reflections about African cinema, and we thought this was a very interesting project, and this is why the Spanish Corporation has been supporting this forum since the year 2013. This is done through the Spanish Agency of International Cooperation for Development. This is through a program called ACERCA. This is a program we're really satisfied about. We have been in this program for 15 years, and this is a capacity building program in the cultural sector. And among its goals, we have to contribute with the training of professionals in the cultural projects in the countries that are partners. It is through this ACERCA program that the resilience of people is fostered, and we promote also their employability. We consider from Spanish cooperation these are fundamental aspects for the economic growth and sustainable development of the countries where Spain is working. As I told you, this program has carried out more than 1,000 training courses in Latin America, America, and Asia, and more than 25,000 people have participated and have benefited from this training related to cultural management and the culture in general, such as the forum that we are presenting now. This goes hand in hand with the goals of this program, all the work that's been carried out from this festival, workshops, courses, seminars are carried out. These are all aimed at professionals, filmmakers that have had difficulties in exhibiting their work in the standardized circuits. This is why we believe that it's fundamental to strengthen this African project, putting special emphasis in the new Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. In this new edition of the African Cinema Festival, we're especially happy to be able to strengthen our collaboration with the creation of the ACERCA Cooperation Award, which will be awarded to the film that supports the best goals of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. And the winner of this award will be announced at the end of the festival on the 12th. And I would also like to mention the topics that the Palaver Tree has been working on in the last 8 years. We have been working about cinema reviews, film journalism, African cinema and its diaspora. And in this 8th edition, we are putting an emphasis on the problematics and the transformation that the COVID-19 crisis has created and how this has affected African cinema. And we will analyze the advantages and disadvantages of strengths and weaknesses of these changes, of these new ways of distributing films. We hope that the exchange of experiences, ideas, and debates that will take place in these days, we hope that they are very fruitful and very useful for all the participants. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you very much, Elena. Thank you, Mane, and thank you. I think before introducing the speakers and the moderator, I would like to remind you how this webinar works. This webinar will be 1 hour of panel, 15 minutes of questions and answers. At the end, the questions can be communicated to us through the question and answer space of Zoom and also through YouTube Live. A member of FCAT will collect the written questions and will pass them on to Federico, who's our moderator. In the streaming in YouTube, we have a 5-minute delay in relation to the meeting in Zoom, so the question time in YouTube will be closed 5 minutes before the actual ending of the end. So we're starting this webinar, which is called African Cinemas, Independent Cinemas, the Business of Cinema in Viral Times in a World that's Interconnected and has multi-screens. How do we make a production profitable in these markets in the times of the pandemics? This is one of the questions that we're going to ask in today's panel, where we will have Kadidia Chigo, who's the director of the Cinema Canal Olympia Teranga in Dakar, Senegal. Chioma Onyenwe, who's a Nigerian filmmaker and the artistic director of the African International Film Festival. And Teresa Hill, who's a programmer of documentaries and the manager of STEPS, which is a non-profit organization which is passionate about the power of documentaries to change the world. Finally, I will also introduce our moderator, Federico Olivieri, who is a partner of this festival from its inception, who's a journalist and manager of culture and a researcher who does research on arts for social change. You have the floor. Thank you, Marion, for this presentation. And I would like to speak for a few minutes in Spanish in order to thank Elena Gonzalez, who from AECID has been with us this morning, and she's been supporting us for many years in the organization of this Palaver Tree. Thank you, Elena, to you and your team, and thank you very much, Manny, for the presentation.
I'm going to switch to English as it's the language that we will use in this discussion with the participants. And again, hello and thank you, Kadidia Jigo, Chioma Onyenwe, and Teresa here for being here with us this morning from your different countries. Good morning. Well, I have to admit that I'm very, very excited to be finally doing this discussion webinar, virtual encounters with you. We have been in touch with each other for several months with different ideas of different formats of this festival, and finally we had to meet on this virtual platform. So first of all, again, I want to thank you, and I want to say that I'm very excited that we finally managed to meet, even if it's in this strange virtual format. As Marion has reminded, the discussion of this morning wants to look at how things have changed in the African film sector, but particularly from the industry and business angle, not only with this global public health crisis that we are experiencing everywhere, the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in this moment of digital transformations that are going faster than ever before, pushed probably by, of course, the moments that we are experiencing. Just as a quick element to introduce the topic that we are going to explore, for those who are following us from different parts of the world, I wanted to start by reminding everyone that African cinema and the African film industry has become a growing sector in most African countries. I was reviewing some data recently that it says that in different countries of the continent, African films and African audiovisual content is booming. Before the beginning of the pandemic, for example, it was estimated that in the mainstream Nigerian film industry, Nollywood, over 1 million jobs are created directly by the film production. In South Africa, only the box office of films is was last year over $89 million US. And as many of us know, in the Senegalese films are also growing. Production has been growing significantly with award-winning titles being broadcasted and awarded in global platforms like the well-known Atlantics by Mati Diop. So this shows how filmmaking before the pandemic was already a growing sector. And I would like to start from south to north by asking to the three of you, Teresa Hill, who is connecting from Cape Town in South Africa, Chioma Onyenwe, who is connecting from Lagos in Nigeria, and Kadidia Jigo, who is connecting with us from Dakar in Senegal. How has this, from where you sit, from your different perspective, how has this pandemic and these months changed or affected your sector? So I will give the ground first to Teresa Hill, who I am not going to reintroduce because she's been introduced by our presenter already. But again, thanks, Teresa, for being here.
Thank you for having me. And so we'll start with the deep south. I'm way down at the tip of Africa, and for me, I think this pandemic has actually been somewhat beneficial for our online platform AfriDocs, because it's forced people to search for content online, whereas before they were able to go to cinemas and festivals in person. They have to resort to looking for content online, and I think that's encouraged people to search wider than they normally would have. So I can see from our channel's number of views that the views have gone up over these last few months. Also, in trying to acquire content for our platform, it's been easier because I think some titles that may have waited for a in-person festival distribution strategy to take place first, or a theatrical distribution, some filmmakers have seen that it's important to get their films out to an audience, and audiences are hungry for content in these times that have been that have seen us sitting in our homes looking for something to do and for content to engage with. So in some ways, it's been quite a beneficial period for online engagement.
Fascinating. So it does sound like there's a silver lining behind all the disruption that from the production side, I guess, many have experienced during the pandemic, the restrictions. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, before jumping also to Chioma and Khadija's observation, if from the perspective of production, has you experienced any, and I know that you have participated in many documentary productions. Yes. I was wondering also if you have anything to comment on how the pandemic might have disrupted that.
Yeah, for sure. On the production side, there have been many disruptions. So the organization that I work at, STEPS, is currently producing or co-producing a series of films from the African continent that deals with alternative narratives of migration, and it's called Generation Africa, and Chioma's a part of that. And the lockdown in many countries happened just as a lot of the productions were going into production, and so that had to be stopped because of restrictions of movement. People couldn't get together and start production, so that's definitely delayed the process for us. It has impact on funding and delivery and all kinds of things associated with that. And our organization also does some more sort of outreach, grassroots work in communities, some community-based organizations where a lot of films are screened as a tool to get people to start talking about human rights issues or violations, and used as a tool for advocacy. And those screenings and facilitated discussions couldn't take place because people couldn't gather together. In some of those countries, things have eased, the restrictions have eased, and those are slowly sort of getting back together again with social distancing and precautions put in place. But that took a long time to get going again, and it has impacted the work that we have been able to do.
Great, thanks. And jumping a little bit further north, I would like to ask now the same question to Chioma Onyenye, who is following from, as I said, Lagos. Chioma has large experience in the film production as a filmmaker, but also in the film promotion as the artistic director of an important African film festival in Nigeria. Chioma, could you also tell us from your perspective how these last months have changed the work that we do, the work that you do in Nigeria?
Yes, thanks. The effect has kind of been bittersweet. So in as much as for a few months, production was shut down, cinemas were closed. So it affected the release of films. But what's happening now in response to that is in the cinemas in Nigeria today, for instance, 90% of what's in the cinemas is local content, right? And that couldn't have happened if there was like more kind of foreign content and, you know, blockbusters and everything. So because that's not happening, the cinemas and the distributors on ground are now more willing to promote and push, you know, Nigerian films in cinema. So we're hoping that the effect continues even after everything opens up. So that's from the Nollywood exhibition point of view. And then what's also kind of happened as well from me, because for the festival, we had to cancel the festival this year. But in light of like promoting African cinema, what has happened is people are going online now and they're more open to non-Nigerian films, you know, so because of Netflix, because of online watching. So so what we've been trying to do with the festival is to expand the audience for African cinema. But now the streamers and the online are helping us do that, right? So they're watching things from South Africa, they're open to subtitled and from across the continent. They're having conversations on this kind of Pan-African films and series. So it's helping to expand the audience as well. But revenue has gone down because in as much as people go to the cinemas to watch, not everyone goes to the cinemas to watch local films, local films. So the blockbusters would have been the draw, you know, to come in and then they could watch something else. So we're having to do, so the general kind of like revenues from the exhibitor's point of view has gone down. And like I said, we had to cancel the festival this year as well, but also in response to the pandemic and in response to like some protests that were happening in the effect. It's still unfolding, but there's been some good. It hasn't been like all bad, but production is fully open now. Everyone is filming. And what was also interesting is because filming has to be local, right? So you can't really be flying in too much crew. So it's forcing us to kind of really kind of ramp up skills training here as well, because you just realize you can't outsource as much as you used to. So that's also going to happen. So a lot has happened, I think, in the past few months. So it's now if we're able to like take the learnings from this to grow the industry in the years to come.
Wow, fascinating. It's very encouraging to hear that despite all the difficulties, the changes that have been imposed, there are so many fast opportunities growing up. Before jumping exactly to the idea of opportunities, let's hear from Senegal, from Dakar, what Khadija can tell us from the experience that she has had in these months of changes and transformation. Khadija, as Marion has introduced her, is the director of an exhibition hall, Canal Olympia Teranga in Dakar. She also has a large experience in promoting cultural and digital content, and she also works on opening up new theaters in other English-speaking African countries. So, has this been possible, Khadija, while people have not been able to go to cinemas?
Yeah, thank you, Federico, for this great introduction. Thank you. Actually, we have been closed since March for from all the venues we have in Africa, from north to south. Like we have most of the venue we have it in the French countries, Benin, Togo, Burkina Faso, Niger, and so on. We have like we had like 12 or 13 venues before the closing of before the pandemic. But since we closed the venue, since the pandemic came, since March, all is closed. All the project is closed also. And what we can say about that is the only way we had to bring cinema back, it was to be alive, to be in live. Like that's why we've seen that a lot of people like going on YouTube, going on platform digital, and also like for example, we had Netflix, who had like some African movies, especially Hollywood movies. And also considering Canal Olympia, it was very hard because we had a lot of projects for this year, 2020, but we could just do two at least. We finally opened, last month, we opened Nigeria, Canal Olympia in Abuja, and in Rwanda, finally. But the way we wanted it to be, it was not like that, but at least we had the opportunity to open these two venues. But it is really a very big, hard year for the venues, for the movies in Africa, because most of the time people give us the movie to put in the cinemas, so that once we put it in the cinema, they have now the opportunity to go to the TV to say, listen, I had this 10,000 entries, I had 20,000 entries, now we can put it in the TV, the national TV. But now they cannot do that, so the only way is to negotiate, but sometimes the negotiation is it's decreased, it's very decreased before pandemic.
I see. Very interesting how from the three perspectives, definitely the pandemic has scaled things down, but has opened new horizons of opportunities through the digital consumption of content. And that has made also the growth of digital African content consumption has made it in the big headlines of those of us who work in this sector. And I know this might sound like a stereotypical comment, but from abroad, we all hear about the large impact, for example, that an exhibition platform like Netflix has started having on the continent, because they want to position themselves as the main streaming platform of, they say, top of the class African content. From what I've been reading, they not only have launched a group of, they have opened an African original content production team, and they are trying to make sure that more African content is produced, mainly from Nigeria, if I'm not wrong, and South Africa. I was wondering if you could, Teresa has already started talking about how this online consumption has been beneficial for the documentary exhibition platform that she manages, AfriDocs. I was wondering if this presence also of major exhibition platform has also, first of all, created more demand, second, also increased the appetite for African content, and how has that, how is this being resolved in these months while no one has been able to produce new content? Teresa. Yes, sorry, Teresa.
I think the demand has increased. There definitely is a greater demand for African content, and Netflix certainly has some benefits, but there are also some disadvantages in that. In terms of distribution, if you're locked into Netflix, that's what you're locked into for whatever period of time, and so it's still not providing access to the majority of the continent. So not everybody has access to Netflix or can afford to do that. And it takes away from other platforms or other distribution channels if Netflix is, monopolizing all the content. But it definitely is an opportunity for African content to be seen. And it's great that Netflix has got a presence and is wanting to co-produce or buy content from the continent. It's just, I think the best takeaway from that is that it does create a bigger demand and exposes people to African content that may not have been interested in it before.
Mm-hmm. And using the ground that we are sharing right now, Teresa, I'm also interested, as when we always speak about filmmaking, we probably tend to think about fiction film series nowadays. As an expert and professional in the documentary production, would you also say that documentaries are also, demand of documentaries or African documentary production is growing? What are your comments about that? As I think that the documentary genre is sometimes also an entry point for many young professionals.
I think it's perhaps a little bit difficult for me to be objective about this because this is the place that I live in, and I'm sort of solely focused on documentary. So in my immediate community, I can see that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of documentary production happening. There are organizations that have been set up specifically to fund or support and nurture documentaries, and there's a lot happening in East Africa and South Africa and Southern Africa. So Chioma and Khadija can speak to their territories, but there's definitely a push. There's a lot of interest. Like you said, it is an entry point for a lot of young filmmakers who are starting off in the industry. And there's a lot of impetus. There's a lot of desire and a lot of mentorship that is happening. And that's exciting, specifically from the Generation Africa production that I'm aware of. There's a lot that is happening to skill African filmmakers and to help them to produce their own stories so that the narratives don't come from the North, which is important. And I think all of that is driving the increase in quality content coming from the continent.
And I apologize if I might sound that I'm going in a different direction. I'll come back to the point of my earlier question to Chioma and Khadija. But using the discussion we are having now specifically on documentaries, I know that those who are following, some of them are young filmmakers from different African countries, different African regions. Focusing again, remaining in the focus on the documentary production and on the documentary promotion, if there is any recommendation from your long years of experience that you could give filmmakers who are starting with their first, second documentary and are wondering, how do we function in this new COVID digital transition world? How can we position our film? How can we enter platforms to start capitalizing on our work? What would you recommend them?
I think these last few months have been very interesting in that young filmmakers and perhaps those who are just starting out or and don't have a lot of experience and perhaps not a lot of funds, these few months have provided access to content and webinars like this one, panel discussions and learning exchanges that a lot of people would not be able to be part of, either because of not having enough money to travel to a festival or not knowing about the programs that exist out there. I think there's been certainly a big opportunity to sort of just take advantage of all the learning that you can do online. Myself included, I travel to a few festivals usually, and obviously during this time was unable to, but I was able to be part of festivals that I would not have considered before because of budgetary constraints or schedules or, you know, conflicting schedules. I was able to be part of panel discussions and to learn about stuff that I wouldn't have considered before. So I think the key is to just connect yourself to as many organizations, filmmakers, just, you know, open up those networks. And through those networks, you'll find some opportunities that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't be aware of. And to take advantage of everything that you can to soak up the information, connect yourself to a more experienced filmmaker in your city or close by, and, you know, sort of try to do those co-productions. That's the way that we learn from each other. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Fascinating. Networks are more important than ever nowadays that we are all isolated from our different locations. I'm going to jump again to Nigeria, to Chioma, to basically follow the same topics and same questions, but from your perspective of as a Nigerian, as an insider of the Nollywood industry that has, everyone knows, is the mainstream, I would dare saying the mainstream commercial African film production industry from within Africa. What would you recommend, Chioma, to young filmmakers who are starting with their feature-length films and they're not yet part of these African and international digital networks?
So the great thing about now is because everything has really gone digital, like Theresa said, like there's such a low barrier to entry. Just over this year, for instance, there's been, I think there are about 2 filmmakers in Nigeria. There were the critics, you know, they did like this VFX. They were not out of Lagos, young boys, and they went viral to the point where they were getting cameras from J.J. Abrams, and, you know, they were getting messages from Ava DuVernay, and that was basically just by, sorry. Sorry.
No, you're still with us. Oh no, now got silenced. Can you hear us, Chioma?
Yes, something. Okay. So sorry, something was playing on in my background. Oh. And yes, so that's what I was, basically just by releasing and putting things out online, from Instagram to YouTube to Twitter, a lot of young filmmakers without even kind of any connections to the industry have been able to scale in an unimaginable way, and scale globally. So I guess that's, for me, the key thing is there's no barrier to entry. So there's, as long as you can shoot something and push it out, or then do it. That would be literally my advice. So in whatever format, in whatever way, and the way content is working nowadays is like you can start in one format and end up in another format, right? So you can start in a podcast and end up as a film. You can start in with a short docu and end up as a docu series, you know. So there's just so many ways to think about how to push out content now. So if you're young, there's really like there's no excuse in terms of like, you know, I have to know this person, or I have to be connected to this person, or I have to go through a festival, because everyone is online. Everybody's looking at what's available online. So that would be basically my advice to young filmmakers. And I think there was a question you asked about Netflix as well. Because I was taking notes. So the I mean, Netflix has come into the continent, I think, well, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya mainly, but they've really been pushing for their original productions and also acquisition in Nigeria. And it's also bittersweet, you know, for me, because on one hand, it's almost like if all of the if all the greats, like all the big budget Nigerian films end up on Netflix, then will people go to the cinema to watch it? So they, as an audience, they have to think, if I have to wait, if it's going to be on Netflix in 3 months or in 6 months, which is probably like the, the concerns of the exhibitors. Like if it's going to be on the streaming networks, the streaming platforms in a month or 3 months, then what is the incentive for me to go and pay a premium to go to the cinema? But we're still a growing industry. So going to the cinema is what will kind of like bring more kind of revenue to the producers. So not the kind of like the broken down acquisition. So it's something that we have to, but because it's, it's such a large platform and because it's such a big name, so there's so much more excitement almost now of the film going to Netflix than the film coming out in the cinema. Right. But we need to kind of, but we can't stun the cinemas, especially here, because not everyone is online, at the same time. Or not, the data costs are still quite expensive, but you have a wider platform, especially a wider global platform, but you also have to build this industry. You also have to build the local industries. You have to build the exhibitions. We can't afford, we need the cinemas. We need more. We need that to also kind of to go hand in hand. So I guess that's my main concern with a global kind of platform coming in. But yes, and so that's the situation on ground. But yes, but for the young filmmakers, I would say just do something. It can be 1 minute, it could be a music, it could be a podcast, it could be a blog, it could be just kind of like whatever content that you have that you can push out in whatever form you can to push that out and just start the journey that way.
Fascinating. I will go back to the Netflix idea of a global exhibition platform in a second, but I want to jump again to Senegal with Khadija and hear your comments and advice as well for young filmmakers and have it probably from your other perspective as a film business expert that thinks about what content should go on screen and how that content gets decided, particularly now, as you have mentioned earlier, that the cinemas are closed, traditional revenue systems of film exhibitions are changing. What would you recommend a young filmmaker to know on how to start positioning their film in this hybrid world of digital promotion and then trying to make it to the more traditional systems of income?
Actually, there is a lot of young people who are still like making movies. And even though there is pandemic, it didn't stop them to do that. But the problem is just they don't have the means to do big things. Like Choma said, that do like you can, even with your phone. Today, I know that there is a lot of young people who are just going to a room and making the movies without any means. But there is also some support, like some companies supporting them. But we can see that the means, the subventions they had before, they don't have it. But there is this creativity they have now. Like they say, okay, we don't have this. I know how to do it. We know how to do it. We have to make this movie go. So there is this kind of creativity they are having, which is really wow. And you can see them just in the road sometimes, or in the beach, or in the room with having elevator closing. I'm like, what are you doing, guys? So they are trying to do things without the means they have, and like they are really trying to do things with what they have in the today, like in this pandemic, because we have the curfew, we have the distanciation, so they are trying to make things like with the phones. Today we can have a phone doing the movie, the other one also doing it at home, so then after they will just match everything in the same time.
Yeah. And from your perspective as exhibition hall owner, director, how is this new way of finding movies that then will make it for the box office of your traditional screen. How is this moment changing also the way that you select films that then get screened in real big screens? Is there a differentiation between those films that end up in the big screens and the ones that need to start making the numbers online first to then make it to the big screen?
Yeah, of course there is, because for example, today, if you open the venues, we don't use all the seats. So it means that we are planning just to share the room in two. So it means that we don't have the whole capacity of the room. So the negotiation of the movie is different, for sure. So what we can give to the projector or the distributor will not be the same like before the pandemic. So the negotiation is really in decrease a lot for them and for us also, because we don't have all the room capacity for the producer. So yeah, so it's like divided by 2 or divided by 3 after the pandemic.
Do you think, I'm wondering right now, do you think that this will lower the prices of cinema in general, if you can say that?
Oh, let's say that the politics, I'm speaking about Canal Olympia because I'm from Canal Olympia. The politics of Canal Olympia is already to give the price considering the local. So our price is really, I think it's €2. It's very it's very like not cheap, but it's really not expensive for the local people where we go. So everyone can afford it today.
Mm-hmm.
But for the other cinema, I don't know what will be their politics, considering if the tickets for cinemas are really expensive, actually.
I can see that. And with this, I will reconnect to the idea of exhibition platforms and Netflix as an example. I was reading that they're planning to try to penetrate the African market by focusing on mobile devices consumption, and they are opening up in countries like South Africa or Nigeria subscriptions for only $2.50 that would allow users to screen the Netflix films on a standard quality only on one mobile phone and one tablet, only for $2.50 a month subscription. This was news that I read recently, probably a month ago, and is their new way of trying to, I guess, find consumers, but also truly low the cost of content consumption. I wonder if this is changing the game also for the cinema and exhibition hall system.
Actually, considering this fact of Netflix, Netflix is engaging like with South Africa and let's say Nigeria, but there is an ignorance also to others market, like French market, like let's say Senegal, let's say Benin, let's say Cameroon. There is a lot of production, but maybe there is this this myth. We say that there is a lot of piracy also in African countries. That's why Netflix is not coming or Amazon is not coming also. So if there is this this program, $2 for Nigeria and South Africa, it can be good also for this other country, so that people can have access to those platforms, which is not very expensive. But we have also this problem, but not forget that everyone don't have access of internet today in Africa. Right. Even though we have WhatsApp, but we don't have the good debit. So we will not be able to look a movie like in the streaming. So it would mean that if someone has $1 per day, we will not be able to look those movies. So we have to adapt, I think we have to adapt the cost to the country and the local, and especially to adapt maybe the internet and those.
Thanks. That is very very insightful and interesting. And I was wondering if from Nigeria and the Nollywood film industry, again, Chioma, Have you heard or thought of any impact in this in this element of the Netflix penetration through mobile phones as a way of giving space for more African local film consumption by users with their mobile phones? Do you think that this is going to be a quick change after this pandemic, or the straight to DVD sales and cinema going are still remaining the main source of film promotion?
Well, well, Netflix can't be the only option, so because they honestly can't, they can't take everybody, right? So even they have their business that so they have their strategies and who they want to work with. And I think coming into Nollywood, they're working with like the top producers, the best-selling producers in the industry. And that has been their strategy. But there's just so much more to Nollywood, so there's a lot of content. There's the different kind of segments from the Yoruba film industry as well. So there's so many different kind of like elements within Nollywood. So they will still have their route to market. So the straight to DVD market is still kind of like a valid market, even though it's kind of been overtaken by piracy as well. But it's still kind of going. It's still for the industry that it targets. It's still valid and it's still moving. What's happening now with like Khadija said, there is the cost of data itself is expensive. So it's not just reducing the subscription cost. So what Google with YouTube has done, and even Facebook, is sometimes they partner with the mobile networks, the telecommunications networks, to sell bundles. So whereas like you're not just getting free, because YouTube is kind of free video platform, but you're also getting it for cheap, where you can buy like 200 MB as a bundle, but watch Google. They're selling kind of data bundles too. So that's really how you have to target the market, right? For $1 a day. As well, YouTube, Facebook. I think Facebook does like even free data. So there's some things you can access on Facebook without having data on some networks. So Netflix would have to basically come to that level, if they want mass adoption on the continent. So where data is available, data as a package with the subscription, and not just the subscription itself. But there's so many producers, not everyone is going to get on Netflix. So the cinema also has to be able to be a valid revenue generation point. And we also have to, I think Netflix is, and there's also, there's DSTV, there are other kind of like video on demand platforms as well. So we're hoping that at the end of the day, like we have to grow revenue from the point of view from the producers, because then if the producers are not able to sustain the content creation, then it's not going to be sustained. And platforms, exhibitors, they think their first priority is their business, so the cinemas are also thinking of how can the cinema sustain, the platforms are thinking of how can the platforms be sustained. But looking at it from an industry point of view, we have to think about how the producers can continue to make films, and they can only make films if they're able to sell their films on across multiple platforms, and sell it for a price that is sustainable, and basically promote it for the price that is sustainable for them to continue to make more films.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. I would like to, since we're covering, the pandemic, the idea of the pandemic disrupting the sector is kind of a broad one, and the digital sector also bringing new opportunities might be looked at from the different areas of film production. I was interested in the comment that Teresa made earlier about how also the social restrictions, the social distancing, have generated new ways of collaboration. I was wondering if we can talk a little bit more about that, about how this interconnection of digital networks is maybe a new way forward to promote African projects and also make them more visible through the different networks of exhibition, and hopefully also make it more visible on global platforms like Netflix or more mainstream exhibition platform. My question is, how do you see that the pandemic has created new ways of producing films that cross African boundaries and international boundaries in general, and how is that going to be feasible or visible in these platforms? Teresa.
I think the actual productions, I think, will always be a challenge if people can't be in the same space together. But because we've had to make alternate arrangements, that, like Khadija was saying about, you know, someone filming something on their phone, another person filming something on their phone, and then putting it together afterwards. Those are the things people have had to resort to make their content. And like Chioma was saying, there's also been this this need to, instead of outsourcing a crew or you've had to make sure that you upskill the people that are closest to you. And so those things are the I guess the positives of building an industry from within, so as not to look outward all the time. And hopefully, like Chioma's mentioned before, these things will continue post the pandemic, and there'll be a bigger focus on just nurturing what's in front of you. And I think the connections that are made online now with all that is available and everyone constantly being online and finding these other opportunities is something that will take us forward when we can meet in person to make those co-productions or to get those funding opportunities that maybe weren't available to us before. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Federico.
No, you are, and I find it very interesting to think that with all this digital interconnection, there are new ways of promoting African cinema across borders, make it more visible on global exhibition platform is the ideal goal. Staying from your perspective of South Africa, I was also interested in asking, how has the official support, governmental agencies in your country have come into place to try to support this complicated period for an industry like filmmaking that generates a lot of income? Has there been any official support in this period from the South African government, of South African agencies, to try to allow filmmakers, film industry experts to stay in the business and not kind of lose hope and prepare for these new post-COVID digital opportunities that seems to be emerging as the strongest alternative?
Yes. Well, traditionally, we don't get a huge amount of support from the government, but we do have the National Film and Video Foundation that is very supportive of local filmmakers. And through this period, they've actually been supporting financially. There was a call put out for films about COVID during this period of time for filmmakers to submit proposals about films around this theme, and so they've provided finance for that. So that's been an impetus for filmmakers to do something, you know, while they're sort of stuck. Restrictions have eased up quite a bit here in South Africa, so people are able to film with the protocols in place, and so that's been somewhat of a support for filmmakers to continue making films at least. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a problem that exists across the continent, really, about the lack of government support for filmmakers or for the arts in general. So we're lucky that we have some support from the NFVF and some film agencies in the different regions that are supportive, but definitely not a huge support from government agencies.
Mm-hmm. What about in Nigeria, Chioma? Has there been any stimulus sort of program to try to allow the industry to stay afloat while it was paralyzed, and how is that impacting the new ways of promoting cinema?
Not really. I think we don't really have we don't have like a grant system in place or like a funding system in place for the businesses or even for the cinemas. The central bank at some point put together a program, but they're all, like, all of the facilities that have come into film have all been kind of loan based. So they're coming from like either the Bank of Industry or the central bank. They're not necessarily, they're targeted. They can, I mean, cinemas can access them easier because they're more of an exhibition business than maybe than producers. But they're all, you know, they're all interests. They're all kind of like loan based. The industry here, we don't have like a films commission. We don't have something that kind of just promotes films and filmmakers. Everything is either independent or led through private equity or loans, more or less. So we're run like a business throughout, and no kind of cultural. There's no kind of cultural integration exactly support. But I guess, but Nigerian projects are also looking out. So for the projects that are able to kind of tap into maybe funds from festivals or funds from international grants, but there's no national system in place.
I see. Khadija from Senegal, I know that in Senegal, the Senegalese government has taken some more visible actions in the last years to support the Senegalese film industry. Has there been any particular new opportunity due to COVID that is helping the film industry to grow?
We can see that the government has done a lot of efforts to help the filmmakers, let's say the culture society. It's not because just the culture, it's not just the movies, that there is these people in the culture society who has rooms for cinemas or for dancing or for singing. So the government tried to help, but still we think it's not enough. And still we are having issues because the culture is the one who has really feel the pandemic. We can feel it still now because everything which is supposed to have culture like event is still closed, and we cannot do a lot of things. Now going to concerts, dance, and this kind of things. But we're still speaking about pandemic, and let's say that the government tries to help, but it's still like a lot of efforts to do again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I see. And jumping from one topic to another, I would like to talk about audiences too, and how this digital transformation, the growth of home-based consumption of African content that seems to be more visible than ever before through these exhibition platforms like Netflix that are investing in making African content more visible on their selection platforms. Are there also opportunities in terms of when we think about audiences beyond Africa, are there, with this in this transformation period, is this opening up new opportunities on how to also make African stories more universal or more appealing to non-African audiences? What would you say about this more global visibility to African content on exhibition platforms right now? And is there a new way of perceiving how to produce films that can be consumed beyond Africa or beyond the only African film circuits? Teresa?
So for the platform that I curate, all our content is geo-blocked for Africa, so that's really not much of a consideration for us. But I think in terms of other productions that we're involved in, of course, the aim always is to get the film to as wide an audience as possible. And particularly if there's stories that are being told from an African perspective, it's sort of quite important that people outside of Africa get that perspective as well. And I think like Chioma was speaking, I think there needs to be multi-platform distribution. And so broadcasters can get involved. And I know that we're going to be broadcasting some of our Generation Africa films on European broadcasters. And yeah, I mean, I just from sort of trawling all the festival sites online, I've seen that there's a significant amount of African content on various festivals, and lots of festivals have African specific programs. So that's a way of introducing African content to audiences outside of Africa. I think it is just about the festival programmers and the content that they choose, and hopefully they're seeing the variety that is out there, and they're seeing the value in African stories. People, particularly outside of Africa, are quite fascinated with Africa for good or bad reasons. And I think it's important that the stories travel. And so it's about building those networks and those cooperations, and having films distributed in theaters, online, and in cinemas, festivals, just as much as we can.
Thanks. Chioma? Any idea, experience about this, on how African content is traveling to broader audiences? I know Nollywood has always been in touch with the African diaspora in the UK, in the US. Is there also new ways of thinking how to bridge with those audiences, with those consumers of African stories?
Yes, definitely. Like it's happening already with things going online and making it like the ease of accessing the content. There's a large African diaspora, like you said, and they're already connected to the content to the films that are coming out of the country and of the continent. So there's, I think, the audience for African films, I guess, like there's the African films that make it onto maybe like the festival circuits, and then they're introduced to a more kind of like Western audience. But those films that tend to kind of do well in festivals don't really get to have an audience even within the continent. So there are a lot of films that are like well made, they've they won awards, they're probably nominated for the Oscars, but on the continent, we can't have a conversation about those films because they haven't been seen. I would say that it would be great to reverse that. to reverse or to do both. Maybe not necessarily reverse that, but in as much as African films are finding their space in the diaspora and for the global continent, the African films that have to be seen across the continent, and not just in this kind of small pockets of festivals and of people who are knowledgeable within the industry. So this is why, you know, the streaming and everything work that AfriDocs do, it's exciting, because at least I can talk about a documentary, but now I can also say, you know, you can go there and you can watch it, and then we can have a conversation. So it's important that we prioritize the African audience as well for a lot of these films. And then also, they're going online, they're finding the audience globally, and we're interacting with other non-European and non-Hollywood films as well. I think K-pop, Korean pop has been really popular during this pandemic. Actually, I've seen a lot more people that are watching kind of like films out of Asia films. So it's really interesting, like the scope, you know, when we think about not just the African diaspora, not just America, not just Europe, like where can our films really get to, and how can they really connect? I know there's a horror film that went to Asia as well. So it's just been like, the world really is open. So it's now, how can we take the next step further, and how can we collaborate? How can we make films together across the world? So I guess that's the goal, you know, yeah.
Thanks. And Khadija, from where you sit in Senegal, also from the perspective of promoting films to local audiences in Dakar through your cinema theater, but also, I guess, thinking of what titles can make it outside of Senegal. Would you say that there is anything that is changing in the way that we connect with audiences when we promote African films?
Yeah, for sure, because most of the time when you have a big movie, you want to do a premiere and to come to the cinema and to go with all those festivals and events. But right now, what we do actually is to promote the movie in TV. Either you pay, like it's free TV, or that you have to pay. So, and sometimes there is some platform that the company will take it and promote it in his platform. So this is how we are doing the digitalization of the movies, and also in the TV. This is the only way we have, and to bring the movie alive in the digital way here in Senegal.
I can see. Before I jump to other questions, I am very excited to also comment on the fact that we have 3 women professionals on this panel, and it's very exciting, and I think it's very encouraging for many that are following us from different parts of the world. As we are talking about all these changes and opportunities due to the pandemic, due to the digital aspect, I would just like to take this opportunity to think about gender and women too, from your own perspectives. Do you see any change too in this moment when it comes to the role of women in African filmmaking from your different countries? I'll start with Teresa again.
Interesting question. I mean, I've been quite isolated and just sort of working from my little bubble here at home, and you know, engaging online. And I have to say that, like, I think just really been engaging with women. I haven't come across many men in my work engagement. So I know that there are a lot of challenges for women in industries, you know, across all industries, and I think that I'm just sort of conscious of making sure that when I choose films or get involved in projects that that there's a good representation of women. So I look for the women filmmakers, and I look for films that speak to women's issues or speak from a feminine voice as well. it's just always top of mind for me. I think that I'm sorry, I can't speak more to what you're asking, because it's been such a bubble that I've been sort of existing in, and the people that I have come into contact with have been predominantly women. Chioma keeps popping up all over the place. So I think there's definitely, I think from my perspective, there's definitely a consciousness that is sort of starting to filter into sort of my everyday interactions with the industry, where women are being considered more. So I'm hoping that that's reflected in other people's experiences, because that's what I've been seeing.
That's exciting and very and very motivating to think about the future opportunities. And I find it exciting to know that even if you say that it's in your own bubble, but I think it does speak about the probably the presence and the consciousness and the importance of considering the perspective of women in storytelling and the production too, and create a space that probably wasn't that visible or accessible before. Chioma, I keep going from south to north.
I think it's amazing, really, like, because in the industry in Nigeria, it's almost 70% run by women. So
Nice.
I guess coming in the past few years, like film has a lower barrier to entry. So it's just about getting things made. So women have basically taken charge across the industry. I guess where there's still work to be done is more below the line, because from a producer, director, actor point of view, women are very well represented.
Mm-hmm.
But for more technical, below the line technical, sound, camera, we need more women in those spaces as well. So I guess that's where, for me, that's where like you need to kind of build on, especially post-production, because I feel like the best editors are women. But then we just need to have that reflected, because we just pay more attention to detail. We just need to have that kind of reflected on in here. So I guess there's definitely, so directly and indirectly, women are fully involved in the film industry here. From the government's perspective, not so much. So from the government, and not really well, but in the industry, yes. So from when I was a child, Amaka Igwe, for instance, was one of my favorite directors. So growing up with women in this space just kind of opened it up. So that's where we are in the industry, and a lot of actors crossing over to become producers. So that has been happening in the past 5 to 10 years as well. So a lot of the top actors are now producing their own content and creating safe spaces for more women to come into the industry.
Fascinating, truly fascinating. I love the idea of Nollywood is run by women. And I'll go a little bit more north again, back to Senegal. Khadija, your perspective too, as a African woman film business
actually
agent.
Here in Senegal, like, it's true that we didn't have a few years ago a lot of women in the film industry. But nowadays we have the training. There is the women who are behind the camera, who are the technical part in the cinema. There is actually this rising of women. Like, okay, this is not a job just for men; it's for girls also. We can do it, and we are making it. And yeah, there is this Nollywood for women. It's quite the same here, cinema for all the women actually, even here in Senegal. But we don't have the S maybe for Hollywood. Who knows? But yeah, there is this rise actually for a woman here in Senegal having training, and there is also some funds who is helping women actually to make this kind of training so that they can do this job.
Fascinating again, and I wonder if the presence of women and also thinking about audiences, the change of stories, or the change of the perspective, the women perspective in the creation of African narratives has made any difference in these recent years? I know it's a broad question, but do you have any comment about how maybe this new perspective of African women in the business has also opened up new opportunities for the business? Is there more of women perspective in also producing content for specific audiences?
Yeah, actually, let's say that, for example, women has always been the weak part of the society, because they are the one who will be beaten, they will be the one who will rape. So it's also a way for women who are trained, who are in the film industry, to show this part of the society and to denounce, actually, to say, stop this. And, you know, there is a lot of activist women who are working on it, and to show during this pandemic, actually, that actually we are really weak and people are beating us, let's say like that, and this is our voice. We just have this voice in film industry or during war and this kind of things. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, no, it's a very interesting comment, and from the perspective of Chioma, for example, in the Nollywood film industry, the perspective of women, is it also visible in a way of the way content is produced? Are there is there a specific market for when it comes to producing stories and films that are produced more thinking about women consumption?
Definitely, because women here are also like the larger audience for the content, right? So in thinking about, there are more women that go to the cinema to watch Nigerian films, to watch Nollywood films. There are more women. So women are in the female, like the female audience is growing, you know, leaps and bounds. So even for the content that goes out online. So I guess even looking at it from the terms of the audience, so the stories have to now start to the stories are more targeted towards women and what those issues were. They're not necessarily, it's more of a commercial perspective. So they're not necessarily coming at it from, it's not all like strategic. I think it's just been more kind of, it's not very deliberate. I'm not sure that it's deliberate because the women in, you know, I'm not sure how deliberate it is. But just knowing that women are the key consumers of the content has also kind of shaped the content that does come out. But then with just having women owning the spaces, having them as producers makes the space safe, you know, much safer than it was 20 years ago, you know, like even for actors that are coming into the industry, for anyone who's coming into the industry, you know, on any level, you know, it's just a much safer space to be in. But yes, the stories are, you know, are targeted towards women, not all positively, but yes, but they were definitely having those slants, but they're a much larger audience for the content as well.
Thank you. And I'm going to jump here, unless Teresa has something more to add on this topic. I'm going to jump to some of the questions that have been coming through the Q&A. I'm going to start with the first one that comes from the Spanish Cultural Center in Malabo. It says, "Good morning, my name is Reina. Thank you for the female presence of today. I have 3 questions. Is there a streaming, do you believe that there is a streaming option that could be the solution for small creators? And how can we get to the big audiences? And at the same time, she also asks, would it be possible to have one only platform of African content? And how would we be able to find a list of these platforms where we can distribute our content? Thank you.
Someone just has to answer.
Yes, Khadija, can be you. Thanks.
Okay, so I think the idea of having one platform for African countries is possible, but the problem is to find the distributor. The circuit for the distributor is very hard to have the movies. As for instance, right now, if you need to have the movie in your theaters, you have to negotiate you have to go to the distributor, and you may not have the good negotiation. So I think the distributor has to have the, how I can say it, to have had the, oh, I don't have the word, sorry. So the distributor has to make the way so that everyone, those people, the filmmakers, should be able to put their movies in the platform easily. This is the main problem that we have. The circuit of the movies is the more difficult we have. But the idea of having a platform today is huge, actually. Like Netflix, if you have an African Netflix, why not? So that you will have all the African movie in one platform, depending just on countries today. But the problem is the distributor. So it means is the distributor is going to create the platform, or is the company to create a platform and to choose the distributor? This is the question we need to think about.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add from Teresa, Chioma on these points?
I don't know that one platform is the best way to go. I think we want to spread our content out as much as possible. I also think the challenges with this is that it always I think comes down to money, and you know, we're able to pay sort of smallish license fees for the content that we host on AfriDocs. But it is restrictive because we can't have as much as we'd like, because license fees are expensive and we want filmmakers to, you know, make some money out of the content that they produce. So there's that challenge. I think the challenge is to have funding agencies or government organizations see the value in having African content available for people to access, and to somehow get involved in funding that. So I'd like to be able to say to the person who asked this question, you can for sure send your content to me, but I can't guarantee that I can afford to buy, you know, everyone who sends me their content. It is just about finding a situation that works for everybody, where people are compensated for the work that they do, but there's a balance between having access to content throughout the continent or beyond. Chioma?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think there can be, I agree with you, there can be, I don't think there can be one platform to serve all films that are coming out of the continent. I don't think there should be. But I guess there's so many different, so it depends on the kind of films. I feel like there's so many different platforms. So but no one has kind of cornered that, I think, except maybe, I don't know, Showmax is also on there. I think Showmax even has more African content on the continent than Netflix, for instance. But there's so many different platforms. But I don't know if there's any list, I guess, but there's any kind of list where you can submit your films. But I guess it would be to go through the distributor as well, to see how many places the film can go, how many places they can get the films to. So I'd recommend the distributor. And even distributors, they don't cover the continent as a monolith. Like it's basically still regional, and it's basically, you know, because there's so many languages, there's so many different like industries. So it's hard to describe, you know, it's not a one-stop shop, more or less. It depends on what you're looking for. If you have more specific information about what kind of content you have and what kind of audience you're looking to get, then it'll be easier to give a recommendation of platforms kind of based on that.
Thank you. I'm going to keep jumping to questions so we have time to answer them. Maybe just not to run out of time, since we have a few questions, I'm going to ask them to the person that I think will give kind of have more experience, but if you want to add your comments, please come in whenever you want. This second question, also from Malabo in Equatorial Guinea, is from Rosendo Gabriel Obun. He's asking mainly about short films. He's wondering how to basically capitalize on the work that they do. If no one, he says, in Spain or somewhere else is normally paying for short films, and normally they don't even get screened in cinemas. So how would you comment on what advice would you give on helping them to monetize the short films, and what does what are the television channels doing to then broadcast short films? He's also wondering, and what he's also wondering what is there to do to make people in Spain and in the world to be more interested in buying short films, so the actors and the production team behind them can actually make a living out of producing short films. Chioma, for example, your perspective on this?
So it's the same problem everywhere, right? It's like short films are they're not kind of being able to monetize. It's hard to monetize. So I guess there are two things. The first of all is to just think about it as a calling card, which means that if you're able to get it into festivals, and maybe that could be a launch pad into making a feature. So that has kind of been the general idea for short films. And two, because like regular broadcasters, you know, they program around certain time spans. So it has to be a 24-minute series. It has to be a 54-minute film. So it's also kind of hard to sell to television. But what you could also do, I would advise, is maybe form a collective. Do you have a number of other filmmakers who package it together, you know? So that could be a way to kind of put it out. So it could be like an anthology of sorts, because then there's so many different ways. Now we're learning that there's so many different ways to consume content, right? It doesn't have to be the same format. YouTube is a good way to go, but YouTube kind of just to get it out there and to start to build the numbers, but it helps to have more than one content. So if you're able to get a number of other filmmakers who have a number of shorts, maybe build a channel around kind of filmmakers in Malabo, and then you can start to build with the shorts that you already have, and you can start to monetize that way. But it works as a collective. If you're able to get if you're able to get 50 shorts, then you can have a channel, you can program around it, you can build an audience. But traditional methods of like shorts, of monetizing shorts is still very, it's not very good.
Any other perspective on short films from South Africa or Senegal? I will jump then to the third question that goes also from Malabo, from Mito, from the Cultural Center in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, that says hi. And he would like to ask directly to Khadija and Chioma, why Nigerian and Senegalese films never get translated into Spanish? If we think that the goal of your films is for their messages to be seen around the world, why never Spanish?
Oh, I think it's a lack of mean. It's not we don't want, but I mean, as the audience is most of French or English, so they prefer to put the maximum on the big audience. We do have audience of Spanish, that's superb. But the problem is the subvention or the money will not be enough to do it very well. Actually, it can be done, but it won't be as well as in French or in English. So it should be just a problem of money. Yeah.
Same for Nigeria, I guess.
Yes, it's expensive, right? But I mean, but that's a business opportunity for you. So if you feel like you have a Spanish audience and you want to dub or put the subtitles on, I'm sure there are like hundreds of hours of films that I can send your way if you're building a new audience, if you're kind of expanding that audience. But yes, it's expensive. And the audience, we don't know that's like from the distributors, from the sales agents, they haven't started to open up that audience. But now we know that the audience can be opened up. So I put it back to you to come back and say, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it. And I'll send you all the films you need.
Well, I think we definitely need to partner with Equatorial Guinea, because at our festival, we always have the added complication of subtitling most of the African films that we program into Spanish. So yeah. Equatorial Guinea, we need your help, and Spanish should be our bridge language. I'm going to jump to the fourth question, also coming from Equatorial Guinea, but this time from the other cultural center in Bata. And they are wondering about film festival. How could we manage an independent film festival and be successful? Is there any African platform that supports independent festivals? And how can we look for support and investment for an independent film festival? Teresa, maybe down to you to South Africa.
I think this is more a question for Chioma, because she's the festival person.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's hard. Like for the festivals that I work with in Nigeria, is privately funded, right? So we get funding from organizations. It's not even from the states or from the government. So I think the first question I would ask is who the audience is and what you're trying to do. Like, you're trying to take African films to your audience. So start wherever you can start. So if you're able to get like a space or a venue where people can watch and just kind of test out the audience, because you need to have like an audience before you can seek funding, or you need to have an idea of like who is interested in this. So it can start as something before it's a festival. You could start as something maybe as a program of sorts where you're just introducing the films. And the good thing about African films and African filmmakers is they really want their films to be seen on the continent, right? So you'll be able to access some of these films at no charge if it's basically to show it as a screening in a festival, compared to like maybe an European festival, or where they would charge, or for another platform where they might charge a screening fee. If a filmmaker knows that, my film is going to be seen in Equatorial Guinea, it hasn't been seen in Equatorial Guinea before, you'll be able to access the content. So I guess the work is basically, what is the audience and how are you able to get that content to the right audience? And you have to do that before the funding and the financing. And but based on your country, if there's any kind of cultural funding, if there are any cultural organizations, if there are even any kind of embassies, because we find that sometimes we get more support from international embassies, basically just as a cultural coming together. So that could also be another way to kind of get some funding to hold events. So, but start with screenings, starts with, screenings, one-on-one talks, starts with just kind of trying to maintain a program of events that can build an audience before kind of scaling it out to like a festival. That's what I would advise, especially if funding is limited.
And to the question of, is there an African platform that supports African film initiatives?
Not that I know of, but there's a private African film consortium group. So I guess like if you're joining kind of like those kind of Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups where they're of other festivals, then you can connect with them. But there's no central There's no central space. It's just filmmakers and people working in the industry across the continent. We just connect on an interpersonal level, set up a WhatsApp group, set up a Facebook group, and I guess that's where we can start to connect. So check out African Film Consortium. I think they're on Facebook as well. Yeah, since it's an untapped audience for us, Equatorial Guinea.
Thank you, Chioma, for these answers. I'm going to let the audience know, both here on Zoom and those who are following us through YouTube, that we are closing the time for questions. So because of the small delay, we still have a few minutes now left to answer the last questions, and then we will close and wrap up this webinar. I'm jumping to another question that comes from Bata, Equatorial Guinea. We are talking about looking at and screening local film content online. How is that possible in societies where there is no internet, no light, and no computers? How can we make that possible? Who wants to answer this question? I'll leave it to you.
I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to answer it. So just, you know, through the other work that we do work in Southern and Eastern Africa, and this is a problem in a lot of countries that we work in. And so obviously, if you don't have electricity and internet connectivity, you can't watch something online. But we have a mobile cinema, little mobile cinema pack that is solar powered, and so we're able to do screenings in communities. It would require that at some point you have access to either downloading a film in advance or finding access to films some other way. And then, you know, all you need is the sun to power the projector and to have a screening that way. So that's one way of doing it, but this is a real problem for many countries on the continent.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other perspective on this? Otherwise, I'm jumping to the following question that I think I will address to Khadidia. This question is from Florencia Bardi. She's wondering how, even if it's more difficult to distribute films in times of pandemic, African independent cinema is there an audience for author cinema or independent cinema in Africa?
Sure, there is. Actually, it's not the good audience of the cinemas. When people come to the cinema, they want to do action movie and to have entertainment. But the cinemas for author is kind of the one we put in the cultural museum. For example, we have the French Institute here, we have the German Institute here, we have we have Spanish Institute. So this is the kind of place those people who like the author cinema will go and see. And what is very good is that those institutes bring a lot of help to those filmmakers who are doing the author movies. But it's not for the cinema. The cinema is for having profits. So if you bring author movies in cinemas, there is no chance that they will gain money.
I see.
Yes. I guess that's why we need the multi platforms, right? It's not, the audience is just not primed for it. Yes. But I guess I always feel like, I don't know, you can still tease them, right? Like if you own a platform, maybe not, maybe like a limited release, maybe just something to grow the audience. Because on one hand, like, we know it's not commercial fare, but on the other hand, like if they haven't seen it, then they don't know whether they like it or not. But it's also, yeah, I understand. Yeah,
and it depends also to the theme of the movie also. If the theme is drama or funny or something like that, actually, it just depends also.
And it was interesting because Netflix said something similar. I think they released a report at some points, and they were like, they're films that people say that they like, but then what they watch is actually different, right? So when they're talking in conversation, they're like, oh, they like all, they like, all of these films and Color Purple, but they really just want to watch Tyler Perry. So it's also, I guess, the role of the exhibitor is to understand like the audience and see like, and give them what they want, in addition to, so all of the serious films are more critical acclaim, is for awards, it's for, so it's more, it's having those films still being made, but knowing that maybe the purpose is not necessarily like mass exhibition.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to jump here because so we cover all the questions and we have just a few minutes left before Marion will wrap up. We have a question from Luis Lopez Sosa from Seville here in Spain. Thank you, Luis, for writing it in English. Makes it easier. In Spain, we have the Spanish VOD platform Filming, which is working very well now, he says. Filming counted since the beginning with the support and collaboration of a pool of Spanish film distributors that allowed this Spanish platform to grow and face Netflix or Amazon competition. Do you think this could be made in Nigeria, South Africa, Senegal, or any other African country? I'll leave the floor to whoever wants to pick it first.
Sorry, I didn't get the question, sorry.
Yeah, yes, Luis is asking from the experience of Spain, of the Spanish market that created Filming with the support of the Spanish film distributors. So this Filming in Spain has an exhibition online platform, has been able to face the competition of Netflix and Amazon. Do you think that this could be made in Nigeria, South Africa, or Senegal, or any other country to create a platform that would compete well with Netflix and Amazon? Are there options?
For me, I think in Africa, we need one platform. I think we need one platform for all the movies, because if it goes just for Senegal, we will not have enough audience for all for the movie. We have a TV, a national TV, just for series and this kind of things. But I think till now we don't have the necessary audience, because there's a lot of people outside who will want to see those movies. And if we make it just in Senegal, I doubt it. So I don't know.
Any counter opinion?
I would be interested to know what that model is that they've used, how they've made that work, because it sounds interesting. I think Africa is huge, and there are a lot of we're all African, but there are lots of differences across the continent about the way that we work, about the way that we produce films, the film language we use, etc. And I think we're just sort of slowly starting to connect across the continent and not just work with the countries that are closest to us. So I think that's a big challenge. It's certainly something that's interesting. And I would be interested to know how these different organizations worked to support one platform.
Thank you. And here I'm going to jump to the last question, but before that, I'm going to make a comment that also Mito sent us after your observations on Spanish language subtitling or adaptation of films. He says that in Equatorial Guinea, you have a lot of followers, and the problem is that not everyone understands French and English. So the solution could be to keep you more in touch with us here in Equatorial Guinea to find possible solutions. So Mito replies to your conversation on this.
Can I ask a quick question? How do you consume foreign content more, as subtitles or dubbed?
As a representative of what I know, I can't speak for Equatorial Guinea. Hopefully someone will send a reply now through the chat. When we consume African films, it's mainly subtitled because we keep it in. But when it's purely entertainment, commercial consumption is dubbed in Spain for us. I'm jumping to the question another question, the last one that comes from Javier. Javier de Soria, who says, who is the director of the International Film Festival of Soria. It's very difficult for us to obtain films and to obtain short films. I assume that it's for the lack of internet or the difficulties to connect with different countries. How would we be able to improve our diffusion, our dissemination in Africa to obtain that more African short films get submitted to us? So this is a question about film festival receiving more short films from Africa. How could they be more?
I would say Film Freeway. There's an online platform that we use even in the festival, and I know other festivals on the continent use that to get submissions. And the good thing is, because if you're specific about the kind of films that you want, it automatically, because a lot of filmmakers already just kind of park their films on that platform, and it's kind of free to use. So I recommend Film Freeway. So with Film Freeway, the good thing is, as a filmmaker, my film is there and I can submit to 100 film festivals, so I can basically, if there are film festivals looking for African content, and there's no submission fee, it's easier for filmmakers to just kind of submit on that platform. So that's really, I guess, the easiest way to do it. The other thing will maybe to collaborate with other African festivals. So maybe if you want to, depending on where the festival holds, if you're looking for something that has already been kind of loosely curated, you can reach out to festivals on the continent, Afrif, Durban, Diff, and maybe look at their program and see, since it's already kind of curated, if you want films that are already curated. But if you want like an open wide, you're ready to kind of go through thousands and thousands of films, Film Freeway.
Thank you, Chioma. Unless there are any other very specific answer to this, I have to wrap up because we are reaching the limit of time. But before doing that, I really, really, really want to thank you again for being connected with us this morning, for bearing with all these months of invitation changes, rechanges, and finally get to have had the at least virtual opportunity to meet, share the festival in this format. I hope that from next year we can go back to some type of in-person meeting so we can all enjoy the human touch too. Thank you to everyone. Thanks, Khadidia, Teresa, Chioma, for being with us again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And the floor to you, Marion. Thank you for closing this new webinar. Gracias a todos.
Gracias, Fede. Qué interesante.
Thank you, Fede. This session has been incredibly interesting. It's been wonderful to listen to these three women, to get to know how production, distribution, and consumption of cinema works in the continent. I would like to thank all the people who have been connected from Equatorial Guinea, Malawi, and Bata, the Spanish Cultural Centers. Thank you very much for being there and for asking questions. This is fundamental, this is essential for the debate, and I would like to invite you to the Palaver Tree Tomorrow from 11 to 12:30, we will have a webinar about the industry entitled European Mechanisms for the Competition and Distribution of African Cinema, the case of Germany in Africa and Europe. We'll have Alep Musa Salvador, who's the general delegate of the Burkina Faso Festival. There will be a producer, one Fine Films, and a member of the European Cinema Academy. And we also have Björn Molfa, the distributor and general director of the EFE Firma, Marc-André Schnarkel, who's in charge of the radio co-production in Munich. And all this will be moderated by Dorothee Armain, who's a filmmaker and programmer of cinema in the Berlin Festival. You can follow us in our social networks. We are in Facebook, in Twitter, and Instagram. And in Twitter, we are having live tweeting of this session. So thank you very much. We wait for you in this channel.